Thank you for joining me and welcome to another Read Aloud. Today we're focusing on our sleuth articles. We're getting those started. One reminder is that you should have these in the packets that you picked up with your iPads. You should also have them on your Canvas or in an email if you didn't get the iPads. So when we're doing these sleuth articles, I want to remind you that you're not just listening to us read aloud the articles. You're answering those questions in the packets. You should also have the text in front of you. So that's a good time to highlight or underline. So if you need to grab a pencil or a highlighter, I would suggest pausing the video and doing that. I want to remind you also that we don't just read the text one time. We read it a couple different times. We read it to find our evidence. We read it to gather information. We read it to just get the gist of it. So we usually read it about 3 times when we're doing sleuth articles. You can use the Fab Five, especially proofs and disproofs. Those are super, super important, and using the evidence from the text. I also thought that these sleuth tips were very helpful. I'm only gonna read the headings for you, but I would suggest pausing it and reading this to help with your understanding of how we use articles. So we use them to gather evidence, we use them to ask questions, we use them to make our case, and we use it to prove things. So, articles we use a lot in our writing. We use them for informational pieces and informative especially, but they can also influence our narratives. So these are really great tips for how you could use these in your writing and how that you can use these with your answering your questions, especially gathering evidence and making your case. Those are 2 very, very important headings. Asking questions and prove it go a lot with your writing. So please feel free to pause the video on this and read those pages. Now let's go ahead and get started with the price of freedom. What are you worth? If you were enslaved in the United States in 1850, you were a possession. Slave owners could buy and sell you for as much as $3,000. For this reason, slave owners offered rewards for the capture of enslaved people who had escaped. The Underground Railroad was a secret network of people who believed that slavery was wrong. They risked the consequences of breaking the law to help people escape slavery and make their way to the northern states or Canada where slavery was outlawed. The use of railroad terms helped ensure secrecy. Routes between stations, homes of sympathetic families who would feed and hide the enslaved people, were called lines. Conductors guided runaways from one station to another. Fugitives were referred to as packages or freight. These people, by the way, this was Harriet Tubman. She's a very, very famous Underground Railroad contributor. These people who contributed to the Underground Railroad included free African Americans and sympathetic whites. However, one of the best-known conductors had escaped slavery herself. Harriet Tubman was born enslaved in Maryland in 1820. By the fall of 1849, Tubman had made the decision to flee. If she couldn't have freedom, she'd prefer death. A friendly white neighbor told her how to find the first safe house on her path to freedom. When she finally reached the North, where slavery was outlawed, Harriet said, "I had crossed the line. I was free. But there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land." Harriet's goal became to help those she had left behind, including her family members. Rather than simply enjoying her newfound freedom, she got a job in Philadelphia and saved her money. In 1850, Harriet returned to Maryland and started leading her family to freedom. Over the next 10 years, she made the hazardous trip south and back numerous times. Because of Harriet's efforts, her family and around 70 other enslaved people escaped slavery. She never lost a fugitive. She never allowed anyone to give up. Harriet was so determined to see these people reach freedom that she carried a gun to threaten the fugitives if they became too tired or decided to turn back. When a person's resolve wavered, she advised, "You'll be free or die." One newspaper in Maryland offered a $100 reward for her capture. But to the scores of people Harriet Tubman helped to reach freedom, she was priceless. This is a map of the Underground Railroad. We've got different escape routes, free states, and then we've got slave states there. Now, this, where it says sleuth work, these are really great ways to help support those questions that you have in those articles, in the article that you have. What clues can you help to find that explain why Harriet was willing to risk her own freedom to help enslaved people escape? So that's under gathering evidence. Under asking questions, after reading the text, what more would you like to know about slavery and the Underground Railroad? Ask 2 questions you're curious about. Make your case. Which of the visual elements that accompany this section do you think are most helpful? Explain your reasons. This is a really good example when they have questions like this, or if you're inspired by one of these, you are more than welcome to substitute one of those reading bingo squares for answering some of these questions. If this is something that really inspires you and makes you want to learn more, absolutely feel free to use one of those bingo squares. Change that topic to Harriet Tubman or the Underground Railroad and enjoy your research, because this is a super interesting topic and there's a lot in here. There's a lot of really inspiring people that have done a lot of really great things that we're going to learn about this week, and I'm super excited for you guys to learn more. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.